So good evening, everyone. I'm glad, grateful for folks to join us this wonderful evening. We are pre-recording. My name is Jazzmine Brooks, and I'm one of the new chocolate milk facilitators in the Des Moines chapter in the greater state of Iowa. I'm excited to be interviewing this amazing legend. I'm fangirling, by the way, because I don't know if you remember, I spoke with you many moons ago because I was searching for a really great program that could be, you know, instrumental to Iowa's, return back to Black breastfeeding and creating space that supports Black breastfeeding, human milk feeding. So I'm just excited that I'm able to interview with you. But I want to give you the floor because, again, folks need to know who you are and the greatness that you are providing to this world, the light that you have. And so please, Mama Hakima, just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are. And let's start there.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to be interviewed by Chocolate Milk Café and by its esteemed facilitators, especially our new ones in Des Moines. So total shout out to Des Moines and the new group you have going there. It's really exciting to see all these baby groups start up. So very excited for you there in Des Moines. I'm Hakima Payne. I'm the founder and CEO of Uzazi Village and the creator of Chocolate Milk Café. I'm a lifelong resident of Kansas City, Missouri. So I was born here and am excited to just share with those listening tonight a little bit of my story, how chocolate milk got started, how it came about, and I'm just as amazed as anyone else by its amazing growth and the amazing women and individuals who run it, and just so excited. So I'm ready to be interviewed and just share what I can of that I hope your audience will be interested in listening to.
Yeah, of course we're interested. Like, come on, you are killing our community. You've done great things and continue to do great things. If you're unfamiliar and watching for the first time, probably wondering like, what is Chocolate Milk Cafe? I'll briefly go over our mission and want to just get your thoughts, Mama Hakima, about like what were you kind of thinking when this first started? So the mission of Chocolate Milk Cafe National is about African American people who face several cultural and society barriers when providing human milk to their infants. The Chocolate Milk Cafe provides a sacred space where families that are part of the African diaspora can be supported and empowered to breastfeed and provide human milk to their children. We seek to assist members of our community with increasing the rates of breastfeeding initiation and duration. Our sacred environment fosters opportunities for our attendees to share their challenges while receiving the support of international board certified lactation consultants or certified lactation counselors. So can you briefly talk to us about that fateful day that you decided this was needed? Like what was that moment like? What was going on for you?
Well, I promise you it was not a moment. It was over many days, weeks, months, and years that I slowly came to this decision, and it was mostly born out of anger and frustration. I had spent many years, way too many years, talking to and trying to work with La Leche League to first diversify their cadre of leaders, and second to bring La Leche League meetings to Black communities across the U.S. Because their meetings were mostly concentrated in white communities. And I had attended La Leche League meetings. I found them to be a tremendous value to me as a new breastfeeding mother, and getting the support and being around other folks who breastfed. And that was just really valuable. And it's like, we need this in the Black community. Black women just don't get this. And they they just really didn't respond. I worked on both the local level and the national level, worked with La Leche League US in the United States, and there was just little movement. I would speak at conferences, I would talk to at board meetings, I would be on panels with talking to the leadership group, just all kinds of ways. I spent a lot of time and energy just trying to convince allegedly that they should do things differently. But in the end, they really just weren't that interested. They didn't want to make that level of change. And so out of a sense of frustration, I said, well, I'll just create my own. We'll just have our own in community support groups. And that's really how Chocolate Milk Cafe was born, just out of the frustration that we were being left out, that we really weren't invited to the table, even though they would always say, oh, well, anyone could come to our meetings. And I would say, well, why can't you develop Black leaders and have meetings in Black communities? And there was just never a satisfactory answer to that. And so I got to work around 2013, creating our first little Chocolate Milk Cafe, which we just had at Uzazi Village here in Kansas City. I asked a couple of new mothers to work with me to sort of put together an outline of how meetings would go. And we've pretty much been true to that outline all the way up until today. But we started having those meetings, inviting Black families, moms, her support person, babies, and that's how it began.
Yeah. No, that's powerful. And, thinking about this week being Black Maternal Health Week, I think about, their primary goal is to, remind folks of the celebration and empowerment of other Black families and the experiences that they have and uplifting their voices. So for you, like, why is peer-to-peer support so important? Like, why do we go to that route when we think about creating sacred space around human milk feeding?
Well, I really designed, since it was Black women being left out, I wanted to make sure that Black women's needs were centered, or Black lactating folks' needs were centered first in the support group. And peer-to-peer, I thought the peer-to-peer model worked beautifully. I loved to see lactating folks supporting other lactating folks. And they didn't really necessarily need professionals in the mix. They didn't need a nurse at the front of the room telling them what to do. They really just needed to encourage one another. And so peer-to-peer made sense to me, just Black folks supporting other Black folks. And so that's, that just seemed to make sense to me, that there should be professionals in proximity so that if folks needed a higher level of care, if they had more serious problems, that there would be someone that they could be referred to. But mostly it seemed to me that the need was just breastfeeding folks, encouraging and supporting other breastfeeding folks, because mostly that's what I saw lacking, is just a little bit of support, a little bit of, oh, that's normal, you'll be okay, or, just a little bit of pat on the back, or a little positive word here and there seemed to be all that folks needed to keep them going on their lactation journey.
Yeah, I love that. And I think something, I want to, echo for you, because you're saying something powerful, was that, what does it mean for folks to just share in culture together and to encourage each other? That takes it such a long way, because I find, as a lactation, professional myself, a lot of these families are needing that day-to-day encouragement. And that's why what I love about Chocolate Milk Cafe is that you can join a lot of these groups virtually once a week, if not covering, over a span of a month. If you're like, I need that constant, reassurance that I'm doing it right. Because that, those things could really, just that mindset in general could take them, to 6 months, to a year, to a year and a half, right? And now they're like, how do I get baby off my boob? Right.
Right. From one extreme to the other. How do I get this baby on, and then how do I get this baby off?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the journey we want to support them in, between those two.
Exactly. So can you talk to us about your own lactation journey? I don't know if you've ever shared that, and I'm curious about, what is your kind of personal experience around lactation?
Well, I definitely found that I needed that support too. I did not successfully breastfeed until baby number 4.
Mm-hmm.
So I had attempted with baby number 1, had nursed for about 2 weeks. My nipples looked like hamburger, the typical sore nipples, bleeding nipples, because I didn't understand latch or suck or positioning or any of that. And so that lasted about 2 weeks. And I was devastated. I was so sad, but I didn't have anyone in my, immediate periphery who had breastfed. So, there was no one for me to talk to. I just didn't know people who had done it. I took it in my head to do it, but I was an anomaly. There, this was 1978, and it just was not a popular choice. And then fast forward to about 1990, I was having baby number 4, where I felt like I had a lot more options, had a little bit more knowledge. I did find a La Leche League group. It was not in my community, so I had to go out of my community, but they held the meetings in a local library, so that was accessible, because a lot of times the Leche Leagues are in people's homes, but this one happened to be in a library. And so I went and really did find support, was just amazed to see babies of all ages and sizes breastfeeding. And I think I went on to nurse baby number 4 for about 13 months or so. But I really just loved the experience, just loved it, and was really hooked. I'd wanted to do it the first time. Babies 2 and 3, I didn't even try because I was so discouraged and devastated by what happened with the first baby. But with the 4th baby, I was able to find the support I was looking for. And it was effective. It worked. After that baby, I went on to nurse the rest of my babies. I have 9 children, so I nursed baby number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 all successfully. Awesome. And so I knew firsthand how important just sitting in a room, not even talking to anybody, just sitting in a room with other people nursing their babies totally normalized it. And I saw the way they held their babies and talked to their babies and positioned their babies. So even just observing it and sitting in a room where it's normal behavior had a profound impact. So I know we've had to make adjustments because of COVID, and all of our chocolate milk cafes are taking place online right now. But I do look forward to a time in the future where we're back together in person again, because that human, in-person contact really can make a difference too. But I'm glad for folks to get online support, and I know folks find and make community in virtual environments too, and that's great. But being in person definitely adds that human touch back to it. But that's my experience. It was a long pathway to successful breastfeeding for me. It was something that was really important to me. It never stopped being important. even when I was too discouraged to try it again. I did make my way back around it to baby number 4, and finally breastfed successfully with baby number 4, and did extended breastfeeding with all my children thereafter. So I hope my story encourages facilitators and other supporters not to be discouraged if someone should give up and say, never mind, I'm going to a bottle. I don't want to do this anymore, because folks can come back around it with a subsequent baby. So, but that's my story. It took a long time for me to find success in breastfeeding, but it was always important to me. And I was really happy when I finally found that success.
Yeah, that's such a powerful story because again, you had 3 children before it worked for you.
Yes.
And kind of recognizing that you found a space and that was like when that shifted for you. So I think that's super powerful and such a huge connection to the work of you creating Chocolate Milk Cafe and all of the leadership that has, went into it since, you founding the organization. I'm curious for you, and this question is not mine, but of leadership, because I'm like, when dinosaurs roamed the land. So the question is, what were some of the breastfeeding roadblocks as breastfeeding parents when dinosaurs roamed the land, as you said? Please explain. I'm super curious.
They're making fun because that's the a term I use a lot. I say, well, when I breastfed back when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
You're seasoned. You're not old. You're seasoned.
So they're using my own terminology back on me. But I would say it was not a popular choice. Like I said, my firstborn was 1978. And even baby number 4, who I did successfully breastfeed, that was the 1990s. It was, barely taken off, but it definitely was not a popular choice in the Black community in the 70s. And in the 90s, it was a little bit better. But I would say I met with a lot of resistance from a lot of well-meaning people who really didn't understand why it was so important for me to do that, why that was so important to me. And, it's a little bit more common now and maybe even more expected. But when I was doing it, that was not the case at all. It was really an unusual choice, and not everybody understood and supported that choice. And of course, that's still true today. You're gonna encounter relatives, especially older relatives and family members and loved ones who just won't understand why that's so important to you, or who actually think formula might be better or bottle feeding might be better. But I definitely had those roadblocks then. And then I also had a roadblock that I would say is still sort of common today, and that's that the professionals weren't really that helpful either. My pediatrician, my OB, they thought it was a fine idea, but they weren't overly sold on it. They didn't think, you should have to work too hard to make that happen. And so I would say just a general lack of support. And then if I named a third roadblock, it would be that it just wasn't that common in the culture. So if I'm a big believer, I was always a big believer in public breastfeeding, that, we should desensitize the public, that we should breastfeed in public, that we shouldn't cover up and hide. And, people are often taken aback by that. But I think breastfeeding should be normalized, that we should be able to feed our babies whenever and wherever we are. And that folks just have to get used to it. So I still feel that way. But there were a lot of roadblocks back when I was doing it. I think a lot of those same roadblocks still persist, maybe not as strongly, but I still, hear young mothers say that their mothers, are the biggest opposers or fail to support them the most. Yeah, because they don't understand breastfeeding, don't believe in it. So I know a lot of the roadblocks I encountered still exist today.
Yeah. So when you think about back then when it wasn't, popular, what was your conversation like with these families that were on the fence or were, telling you that this wasn't something that they wanted to do and, didn't have that strong reason of like, oh, I have, this type of condition or those types of things, but truly it was just socially, they were just like, that's not something I want to do. What was that conversation like to get them to, breastfeed their child?
Well, I think that there's a saying that the old folks say, more is caught than taught. And that I think we lead more by example on this, so that when mothers are just out breastfeeding and other mothers see it, or other, expectant mothers or future mothers see it, then they're really powerfully impacted by that. I don't think I said a lot. I just led by example. I just breastfed my baby, didn't matter who was opposed to it, whenever and wherever I was, and that spoke volumes, and it gave other people the courage to do the same. And I think that still works today, that we just get out there, feed our babies, and just do that in the face of whoever might be opposed to it. Do it anyway, and others see that, and it empowers them.
Yeah, I love that. And it brings some connections for me. So I don't know if you know who Cynthia B. Dillard is, but she talks about her time going back and forth to Ghana and how seeing and being a part of a culture of people who have just never been displaced that just glide, right? The things that they're just able to do because, again, they've never been displaced. They've never faced these different types of oppression. It's just like, what does it mean to just like exist within your own culture and to feel like empowered and strengthened by that? And you mentioned this concept of like, I'm going to lead by example. So they talk about remembering me just seeing you do something that I may not be familiar with, but it starts to register in my head. This is a memory of my people that I carry. So, I haven't had children yet, but as a facilitator, I'm excited to have kids because I get to be around all these Black moms that are breastfeeding and baby wearing and breastfeeding in public, sharing their milk, right? Sharing their stories. It just feels so exciting. And I haven't even had an opportunity to do it yet. So I love that. I love that you bring that up. So thinking about, where Chocolate Milk Cafe Nashville is now, they're turning 2 years old. I want to share some stats with folks that we have 55 facilitators within 10 states, in addition to Canada. That means there's 16 chapters and 21 meetings a month. That's crazy.
Wow.
What's your first what's your response to that?
Well, it makes me really proud, first and foremost. I knew that this was a model that would catch on. I firmly believe, I've always believed that we'd have chocolate milk cafes in every state eventually. And I absolutely still believe that. I think there's been a need. There's always been a need. And if La Leche wasn't willing to meet that need, then we could step in and meet that need for ourselves. And that Chocolate Milk Cafe will just continue to grow. But I'm so excited when I hear these numbers because that just means more Black families, more families from the African diaspora are being served in their lactation needs or in their needs for lactation support. So it makes me so proud. It makes me so happy. And it absolutely is what I expected to occur.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I'm excited. So, upcoming developing chapters are in Chicago, Texas, Colorado. Iowa was just, we just got trained back in the fall. So, yeah, it's so amazing to be a part of that. So when you think about like you all's work for the future, you mentioned, being this national head, base and leaders for, providing human milk and creating these Black sacred spaces. Can you tell us a little bit more about like what does that future vision look like? Like what can we expect, or what are you all exploring from your perspective that can add to this growth that we're seeing right now?
Well, I don't know if I'm the best person to ask about the future Chocolate Milk Cafe because I'm more the historian of the past.
Yeah.
I've sort of passed that torch on. And so I know that LaShonda and Takesha have much better responses for that because they're the visionaries and they hold the keys to the future of Chocolate Milk Cafe. But I know that we're all in agreement that yes, Chocolate Milk Cafe should be in all 50 states and other Canadian provinces and other places around the globe where there are Black families who are in need of lactation support. So I know that they have other, the executive team have other much more specific goals for Chocolate Milk Cafe. They're expanding into baby wearing. And all sorts of other things. So they'd probably be better to ask that question about the future. But I do know that that expansion is in our future, and that will be everywhere where Black and African diaspora families need us.
Yeah. And what do you think about the future of lactation within Black culture? What are your hopes and dreams for that?
My hopes and dreams have always been the same, that it will become once more normalized to our culture, because it was normalized to our culture. It was taken from us. And so I love being a part of the restoration of the great role that lactation has always played in the health of Black babies and Black families. We have always been a breastfeeding people. It's here that has shifted for a time when formula and bottle feeding became more normalized, and now that's shifting back, and I believe that's the way it should be. Not that I'm opposed when there's a need for formula feeding or bottle feeding, or if folks just want to make that choice, that's absolutely their right. But I would love to see breastfeeding once more become the social norm of the Black community for infant nutrition.
Love that. I love that. Yeah, it saves lives. I talk about it being medicine. Okay, so can you talk to us about because I'm assuming a lot of folks who are watching this are new facilitators like myself. Like, what are your what is kind of what you want to make sure that we know about, Chocolate Milk Cafe that could really help us to articulate, empower the impact of this space? So speaking directly to folks like me.
Yeah, what I really love about the model is its flexibility and moldability. So make it what you need it for your community. Mm-hmm. Chocolate Milk Cafes are not, cookie cutter. We do have a template to give you an outline, to give it a little form and structure, but make it what you need it to be for your community. And I love that. So, you can alter the days, the times, the physical places when we're meeting in person again. There's a lot of flexibility built into this model so that it can meet the needs of your particular community. And I think facilitators should go with that. What does your community need? It doesn't have to look a certain way or feel a certain way. It can be what you need it to be.
I love that. Was there anything you did to make, the space fun? Any activities that you can think about, like things that you all shared that you think would be really helpful for like a little fun thing for us to know?
We always had little activities. We, made space for the children because babies, would play at our feet. Back in those early days when we were meeting in person, the babies were always at our feet, but also just making it a really comfortable space for the mamas and their partners, attractive spaces, bright spaces, tending to people's comforts, having snacks, comfortable chairs to sit in, putting them in a circle so everybody can see everyone. It's not a formal class, it's a social gathering. So treat it like a social gathering. But no tricks of the trade beyond that, beyond, good basic hospitality, making sure that people were comfortable in comfortable spaces and had their needs met for the duration of the meetings. Something cold to drink, maybe a footstool for mamas to put their feet up on, just tending to basic comforts, but also using creativity, playing lots of games when we were in person, although you can play games in a virtual space too, but making it fun, not dry and clinical or didactic, but if you're sharing new information, find a way to share that information in the form of a game or making it fun. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love how free floating it is. Like there's some structure of like us talking through, different concepts of, how to keep the space, really about everyone. So you said bringing your littles to having some welcoming activities, thinking about that external piece of like environment, lighting, color, sound, all those things. I think, obviously with COVID, we're, cramped up into this little bitty screen. But I think truthfully too, as someone living in Iowa, I appreciate being able to be in this virtual space because we have a lot of different pieces of, different folks just spread out across the state that don't always have the ability to drive or get to the next, location. So it's really awesome. So I guess my last question for you is, what is your message to families? Like what does it mean if you had, an elevator speech to just talk from the heart, your passion, the light of, providing human milk? What would you say?
I'd say providing human milk to our babies is a legacy. That is our right, and I've become really frustrated by folks imposing on that right or diminishing that right. It's our birthright to provide our milk to our babies if that's what we want to do, and the system should really stop at nothing to protect our right to provide milk to our babies and to support us in that effort. But that's not always what happens. Often our efforts to breastfeed our baby, even when that's our strong, heartfelt desire, we're often sabotaged, discouraged, made to think something's not possible when it's entirely possible. And I really just want us to reclaim our right to provide human milk to our babies in whatever way we want to make that happen, whether we want to pump, put it in bottles, maybe when we want to lactate from our breast or our chest, whether we want to co-nurse along with someone else, a partner or someone else who's providing milk for our infants. However we want to make that happen, I want to see us supported in that, and I want to see those behaviors normalized, accepted, supported, and really rejoiced over that we should be applauded for providing human milk to our babies, not discouraged in any way or sabotaged. So that's why the work that facilitators do is so important. So when facilitators are listening to this, you have great work to do. This is really critical, important work because so many folks are out there working to discourage our families from breastfeeding or providing human milk. When you're out there doing the opposite work, the holy and sacred work of really giving families the support they need to continue on, helping families to provide their infants with the best nutrition possible. That's really critical, important work. I applaud it. And I want facilitators to know how sacred that work is and how important that work is.
Thank you. I love that. And as we wrap up, again, happy birthday to Chocolate Milk Cafe National. Just really excited to be present for the second year and hope to continue to be present for future years. If you are interested in joining either as a facilitator or as a current or future lactating parent, joining the chocolatemilkcafe.com website to learn a lot more about Mama Hakima and the work of our leaders, Takesha and Lysandra. I appreciate everyone that is on the leadership team and board, and just everyone I've just even been in contact with of lately, because we do a lot of great learning and opportunities to just, again, engage around this really, really important topic. But I appreciate you, Mama Hakima, for taking your time this evening to just chat with me. And again, wish you the best as you continue your journey. And have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. So grateful. I appreciate you. Bye-bye.
Take care.